Welcome to the world of scale modeling with Mike Ashe, where techniques, tips, and creativity come alive with dozens of tutorials, projects, tape-up reviews, and picture references to help you build better scale models and enjoy our wonderful hobby. Hello everybody, and welcome to Part 5 of Building and Detailing the Hobby Boss 1 to 350th scale USS Alaska. The hull deck assembly was taped to stacks of balsa wood, which were then taped to the wood construction base for painting. The hull was primed and then strips of masking tape were applied along the raised forward and aft superstructure positioning areas so that I wouldn't have to scrape the paint off for gluing. The deck was then primed, and now it's time to start airbrushing the finished colors. The hull, splinter shields, and raised details were airbrushed flat gold gray. The hull has no line for the lower hull color, so I set the masking tape 1/8 of an inch above the bottom of the armored protection belt, and I had to reposition the tape several times to get it straight. The masking tape was carefully extended beyond the armored belt to the bow and then the stern. Here again, it took several attempts before I finally achieved a straight line. The hull assembly was repositioned and lengths of masking tape were added to protect the flat gold gray color on the upper hull area and the deck. The red hull color was achieved by mixing a few drops of flat black with the flat red color so that the resulting color was a blood red. The lower hull red color is straight, and there is a sharp demarcation line between the colors. Having a straight line for the hull red color will make it easy to mask for the black boot stripe. The lower hull color was masked, and then short strips of approximately 1/8 inch high masking tape were positioned against the lower hull masking tape. The upper hull masking tape was then applied. With the height of the boot stripe set, the small lengths of tape between the larger lengths were carefully removed and the edges of the remaining masking tape were firmly pressed down. A lot of masking tape was applied to protect the lower and upper hull areas from any airbrush overspray. Flat black was used for the boot stripe. With the boot stripe applied, now it's time to mask the hull for the Measure 32 gray-black tone Dazzle pattern. The port side patterns were cut out for the Dazzle black color, using the kit supplied color sheet as a guide. The starboard side Dazzle black patterns were then cut out and applied. With the hull mounted on its construction board, tape was applied to protect the lower hull colors. Tiny strips were carefully applied to the deck splinter shields. It is very important that ample tape be applied to cover the lower hull, as airbrushing spray can seep into tiny cracks in the masking tape. The black Dazzle pattern color was achieved by adding a few drops of flat white to flat black, so that the resulting color is a dark charcoal. Good masking technique and double-checking the edges of the masking tape helps ensure sharp demarcation lines between colors. All the tape was removed to check all the colors. With the hull colors now complete, it's time to start airbrushing the deck colors. The hull was carefully taped at the edge of the deck, and then strips of masking tape were applied to the exterior of the splinter shields. I should have also masked the inside of them. With the splinter shields masked, it's time to start airbrushing. Had I checked the Classic Warships publication on the USS Alaska more closely, I would have determined that both sides of the splinter shields should have been flat gold gray. The entire deck was airbrushed with light Euro No. 1 gray color, modified by adding just a little bit of flat white to it to lighten it up. The outlines of the lighter Euro 1 gray deck color were applied using very thin strips of masking tape. Larger strips of masking tape were then used to fill in the areas where the lighter Euro Gray 1 color is located. All the exposed deck areas were then airbrushed Euro 1 Gray. With all the masking tape removed, the deck colors have sharp demarcation lines. The shaft assemblies and the rudder were airbrushed with the same hull color, and then attached with super glue to their locations on the hull. Tiny drops of white glue were used as filler around the rudder and V-strut legs. These areas were then touched up with the hull red color. Now it's time to correct my mistake. The interior deck areas of the splinter shields were carefully masked with tiny strips of masking tape. With the decking areas inside the splinter shields masked, now it's time to cover the outside faces of the splinter shields and then the entire model. A lot of masking tape was required to cover the surface and the hull to correct my mistake. I then airbrushed the insides of the splinter shields flat gold gray. I removed all of the tape from the model, and then I started the process of correcting the port dazzle pattern on the hull by making it slightly longer, and I also did some minor touch-up work. The hull deck assembly and painting is now complete. All the colors complement one another, and there are sharp demarcation lines between the colors. The forward superstructure assembly was primed and flaws were sanded smooth and then reprimed. Strips of tape were applied to the inside lip of the forward superstructure so that any paint would not have to be scraped off later for gluing. The entire surface of the forward superstructure was airbrushed Euro 1 Gray, and then the area where the lighter deck color would be was masked off. This is the same lighter Euro 1 deck color that was applied to the main deck. With all the tape removed and the deck checked for flaws, it's time to mask the deck for the flat gold gray color. Strips of masking tape were carefully applied along all the edges of the decks, and then the remaining areas were filled in with larger strips. This part is now ready for the flat gold gray color that'll be airbrushed onto all the vertical surfaces. With the flat gold gray color applied, the forward superstructure is now ready for masking the black dazzle pattern. Strips of masking tape were carefully placed on the sides of the superstructure to create an outline for where the black dazzle color will be applied. The remaining areas were then covered with larger strips of masking tape. Here is the port side dazzle pattern masking. Use thin strips of masking tape to outline the pattern so that the tape will easily form around any protrusions on the sides. The color I used is the same color that was used on the upper hull for the dazzle pattern. The decks on these forward superstructure parts were airbrushed with Euro 1 Gray. The decks were then carefully masked with tiny strips of masking tape in preparation for the flat gold gray color on the sides. Use lengths of balsa wood to attach small parts to, and it makes airbrushing them a lot easier. Elevating parts so that you can also airbrush the undersides allows you to complete the painting in one session. The mask was first carefully masked with tiny strips of tape, and then larger strips were added to seal up the lower masked area and the superstructure. The other parts were masked for the black dazzle color. All the masking tape has now been removed and all the superstructure parts look pretty good, and there are sharp demarcation lines between the colors. I hope you enjoyed Part 5 of building and detailing the Hobby Boss USS Alaska, and stay tuned for Part 6 where we continue the dazzle pattern work on the aft superstructure and the rest of the parts. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give us a thumbs up. And when you get the chance, visit our website at www.mikeashley.com. where you're going to find dozens of free PDF downloads, including tutorials, picture references, model galleries, projects, and my 5 original scale modeling books. Thanks to Bensound and Videvo for the royalty-free music, and happy scale modeling!